Why has choosing a school become such a controversial topic in our community and not just in our community? One person that I really love talking to about this topic is my sister, Reem Salman. Reem is an assistant principal at a Catholic school. She has her master's in educational administration. She's taught multiple grade levels in elementary and middle school. She was a religious education director, and so I thought it would be fun to just put our conversation out there in the public, one of our regular conversations that we might have, and share a lot of her knowledge on this topic. So I might ask her some questions. We might just talk about it and see where it takes us. But I really hope you guys enjoy this episode.
The Calvin Catholic Podcast. The Calvin Catholic Podcast.
Hi, Reem. Welcome to the podcast. Is it weird that I'm doing a podcast?
No. But I do think your listeners are going to be a little confused because we probably sound the same.
Yeah, we have a very similar voice. So hope you guys can set us apart. Either way, even if you don't know who's talking, it's going to be a good conversation. All right. So the first thing I really wanted to talk with you about, and I tried to come up with some things that we haven't talked about recently so that we could have a good, natural, flowing conversation. I want to know why you think homeschool is on the rise. I think we know the obvious reason, which is that people are unhappy with public schools. Is there more that you'd want to add to that? Like, why is homeschool becoming so popular? Is it becoming popular in our community too? Like, what are you seeing in this whole category?
There are a lot of reasons why they're choosing homeschooling, whether it's the curriculum, the school day, the environment, not being satisfied with their current school. There's been a huge shift in education in general, but a lot of it started to happen when COVID happened, right? So parents started to become more involved in their kids' learning. They didn't have a choice. They were forced into it, and they saw what was going on in the classrooms. So depending on what the school did, some of them tried to go online, some of them were completely remote, some of them were in person, but parents just had to be more involved. And when they became more involved, they started to notice things that they were not satisfied with. And I think they started to take a little more control of their kids' education.
To me, it's like almost like having your dream school. Like that's how I view homeschooling. I know it sounds like a lot more work on the parents, but as somebody that I was a preschool aide at a Catholic school, and I would see, and this is just for preschool, I guess. That's a preschool perspective. And I had some other educational experience that we'll get into later, but at the preschool, I saw how much of the day was not actually used on learning. It's learning other things, social skills and whatever. But I mean, the actual academics part.
That's a big piece, right? That's kind of the why. There is a lot of time, like a homeschooling child on average, depending on what grade they're in, typically will do academics maybe for an hour and a half to 3 hours. Our kids are going to school for 8 hours a day. On top of the 8 hours, they come home with another hour or two of homework. And typically parents will think like, why is my child in school for 8 hours? You couldn't cover all of the content. So on top of that, they're coming home to spend another hour or two when a homeschooling child is getting an individualized education and they're doing it in 2 hours. They're graduating early. They're starting college early. That's one of
Yeah.
the whys, right? Why is homeschool on the rise? Statistically, since pre-COVID, it's nearly doubled. So pre-COVID, I think it
Wow.
was around 2 million, 2.5 million or so families were homeschooling their kids. And now it's almost at 4 million.
That's actually crazy. So
Yeah.
and the thing is, I didn't even know any of these numbers until right now because I asked you to share some new information with me on this podcast so that we could have a, like a totally natural, real discussion. Because you're really full of education information to me. Like even though you're my sister and we talk about it all the time, I am always learning something new because this is your whole career. This is what you work on every single day. I just noticed it. I just noticed people talking about it. I didn't even know these crazy numbers. I want to talk about something else that you and I always talk about, which is like, some people say, oh, if you homeschool, you lose the social aspect. But and I know you definitely don't agree with that, but I'll let you put in what you want to say about that in a sec. So, all those hours at school that are spent on other things, which are probably good. I want to talk about like how you can incorporate other things at home. And I just want to say this is not a podcast to encourage everybody to homeschool. This is just the beginning of the
No.
conversation. I just was curious about homeschooling and I wanted to talk about it first, but we're going to go through everything. So stick with us. We're going to go through every kind of school that you could think of. So, like, how do you supplement the academic part? Let's talk about that at home.
So with homeschooling, I think there are so many opportunities to incorporate all different kinds of skills, whether it's social skills, academic skills. I think you can take your kids on field trips, just going out and socializing, taking them to the park, going to museums. There's just so many different ways to learn these days. But people worry with homeschooling that their kids are missing out on social skills. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth, especially in today's day and age and the way that our culture and community has shifted around homeschooling. There are so many opportunities to socialize your kids. In fact, I actually think they tend to be more social and have those opportunities a lot more than schools do. When you're in a classroom, you're sitting and you're working, and most of your day is spent walking in a straight line quietly, sitting in class, learning quietly. You get to go outside for recess, which they've cut out from most schools and limited it to maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day. If they're lucky, they might get 2 recesses a day. How are they socializing in the classroom? You really have to ask yourself those questions too, whereas a homeschool kid could be part of a hybrid school or a learning pods, homeschool groups where they do a bunch of like fellowships and different activities with groups to socialize. And the entire purpose of that is for kids to socialize, right?
What's a learning
Schools,
pod?
sometimes families will choose to create groups. So like learning groups where they have maybe 5 different families who are homeschooling, they get together and homeschool together.
Oh, okay. So how is that different from a hybrid homeschool?
So a
Yeah.
hybrid homeschool, you go to school, you could choose a school. We have some around us. Maybe Regina Chaley is one of them. There's High Point Academy. Our church actually has one too now. But you homeschool your child 3 days a week, and then you take them in person 2 days a week. Most of them are 2 days. It would be great to see some doing it for 3 days, maybe like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we've talked about this before. But yeah,
Yeah.
they go in person to an actual classroom
Can we
settings.
say why, like you and I love the idea of doing Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in a hybrid homeschool?
I actually, as much as I'm like talking pro homeschool right now, because I do love homeschooling, I also love schooling. This is what tears me apart because I do love a school setting and a lot of what comes with it as well. So to me, the best of both worlds would be having a shorter school day, a shorter school week, having more time at home. I don't think 2 days is quite enough for me personally. I think 3 days, even 4 days is okay. And they would still be getting a school setting, but also more of their time would be spent at home. I really value the time that I have with my kids to teach them the way that I want to teach them. But I also, again, I love the school setting as well. And I think there are pros and cons to both, depending on what you're looking for.
Isn't it so hard to like teach at home when you're so busy? And once you're home, like this is what I learned when I took time off work to raise children. I get way less done at home. Like even though we have a home office, I'm like, oh, there's all the chores of the house. So I'm like, all right, let me do laundry, let me do this, let me do that. And I just don't get as much done as being outside of the house. Like my question is to recap is like what if like you decide to homeschool and then you're like how do you make sure that you're doing right for your child? Like is there some kind of like something to hold you accountable?
There are. So homeschooling is very, very flexible, and there are a lot of different ways to do it. There are families that strongly believe in the idea of unschooling homeschooling, which is basically reshaping your mindset in the way that you view schooling in general. This idea of making sure that kids learn specific standards at specific grade levels, and then asking yourself, why do we even care if they're learning it by this grade level rather than when they're ready for it? They could be ready earlier. They could be ready later. Why does the government decide with these standards when my child is ready to learn specific skills?
Well, what
I'm not
if
even going to get into that conversation because we could talk about that for about
wait,
five
wait, wait, wait. Can
hours.
I ask one question though? I just want to ask one question.
Yes.
Okay, like what if you
Yes.
quote unschool your child and then they can't pass their exams to get into college? Seriously.
Well, I think the biggest idea behind it is that eventually, by the time they finish their schooling, they will get all of the concepts mastered before they do go to college, but they're just going to do it at their own pace and time. Meaning, some kids, that's why a lot of homeschool kids graduate early, their pace and time is a lot earlier than other kids. Some, they don't get it until later. But that's the whole thought process behind unschooling is you kind of follow the child. And again, I don't want to get into it because then we get into like why it's good, why it's bad, and I can talk about that piece forever because I don't
Okay.
know if I can necessarily say I'm pro unschooling or I'm against it.
Yeah.
But that's just one way to homeschool. Another is to follow exactly what they're doing in a local school or just schooling and following the Michigan guidelines. That way, if your child was to decide, by third grade, I want them to go back into the school system, at least they would be ready and prepared for that. So
Okay.
I've seen it done in different ways. There isn't one that's the right way or the wrong way. It's just a different way of homeschooling.
So I think that kind of answered my question a little bit about how to be held accountable. You said there's Michigan guidelines that tells
Yeah, there are
you
standards.
like what your kids should be learning at what time. And then like, okay, let's just say that I am good with every subject. And I can teach my child every subject. And let's say I'm stuck on a subject. Like there's one subject that's just a little challenging for me. I don't want my child to fall behind in that one subject. I know we're talking about homeschooling kind of a lot, but I just have a lot of questions.
Yeah, so I think we live in a world where every single thing that we need in life is at our fingertips, right? Literally everything. You don't know how to do something, you can figure out how to do it by going online.
True. Yeah,
Um,
very true.
there are so many resources out there. One of the trickiest things with homeschooling is the lack of confidence that parents have to homeschool. I'm in a lot of groups, like Facebook groups for homeschooling and just all different types of education. On one of the topics that comes up often in one of the groups that I'm in is I just don't know if I can do it as the parents. And it's this fear, the same one that you're communicating with me right now, that you just might not be good at teaching a certain subject and your kid's going to fall behind. But anyone can teach with the right resources. You just have to be motivated enough to learn how to do it. And
Yeah.
there again, between YouTube and the teachers, paid teachers, and all of that stuff online, there are just so many resources. It's impossible to say that you wouldn't be able to do it, especially at the K through 5 grade level. I know sometimes the content gets more difficult as the kids get older, and that becomes more challenging. But even with that, you think about schooling, how many parents get tutors for their kids because they can't personally teach their kids whatever it is that they're learning, especially in math.
I really like the idea of a hybrid homeschool a lot. It's something that my husband and I have not decided on, but we haven't even looked at any of our options on that. If there's any schools that we like that even offer that to us, but like, sounds really, really good.
My dream
We're
school just doesn't exist. It's it's one of those things that you and I do talk about a lot, but that would be my dream school. Just because, again, I think family time will trump school time in my head any day. And I think trips are so important. I love to travel with my kids because I think they'll learn more on those trips than they ever will in the classroom. It's hard, right? Like some schools are very, very strict on attendance. Pulling your kids out to take a family trip or to spend the weekend doing something, some of them are actually like they're kind of mean about it. They won't give you homework ahead of time, and they do not like kids to miss school. And it's like the end all be all for them. My mindset is totally different than that. I
wow.
strongly like when I used to have students that would take trips with their family, my response was always, go, have fun, learn something new and bring it back to me. Don't worry about the homework, as a teacher, because I understood the value in that. Even if you went and sat at the beach the entire time on your trip, just that family piece is so important. I
Oh
don't think
yeah. You could
our
learn so much
society,
from the beach too. Let's just
yeah,
put
I
that
mean,
out
I
there.
just obviously you and I, you know that like our society doesn't value family time as much as everybody else would. And that's why it's so important to me. Yeah, that's a perfect school. It's my dream school. It doesn't exist, but I say it doesn't exist yet.
That's right. Thank you. It will exist. We will make sure it exists in our lifetime because we are devoted to this, definitely. Me and Reem have a dream of a Chaldean school, and we're going to make it happen. A Chaldean Catholic school, right? One way or
Oh yeah, it's
another.
coming. Yep, it's coming. Everyone,
one
brace
way
yourselves.
or one way or another. It's going to happen. Mark our words, listeners. Hybrid homeschool sounds like a dream, but to be a little realistic of what might happen in the near future, I think our family is looking at Catholic school. And I was very surprised to learn from you that sometimes even though our faith is so important to us in our community, and we would prefer that everybody had a Catholic education, sometimes Catholic school is not the best choice for somebody, even in our community where we place our faith as one of the highest core values. So, like,
Yeah.
in what situations would you say that it would be maybe better to consider public?
Well, in all situations, it's kind of a loaded question because we live in a time we're very, very lucky. If you think back to our upbringing, we had very limited options, right? It was public school or private school. Private schools were very limited in a lot, like it was hard to either get into them or they weren't that accessible, especially like they are now. But it's not like they didn't exist. It was typically those two options though that people looked at. Now, just like we talked about, there's homeschooling, there's hybrid homeschooling, there's different types of private schools, there's charter schools and the public magnet schools and the public schools. There are so many options out there. And I think for any parent, going back to your original question, for any parent, it all depends on the child. Not every single child will thrive at every school. You have to understand what your kids' needs are. And I often get this question, what's the best school? Where should I send my kid? I get this question all the time. And my question is, well, what are you looking for? So I encourage every single person to go out and make a list of their top 5 most important things and look for that in a school, because a school that might be great for your kid might not be so great for my kid. And I already see that. My kids are 5, 3, and 1. They're very different in the way that they learn, the way that they communicate. I know that Braden, he's my oldest, he's 5. I already can predict what some of his struggles are going to be. And I'm open to the idea that, hey, maybe a 5-day-a-week school might not be the best fit for him, or it might be a great fit for him. He's not quite there yet. But if it's not, it's amazing that I have options. I could try hybrid homeschooling. I could try homeschooling. I could try a magnet school. So without knowing you have to understand who your kids are and what their needs are to pick the best school for them.
What are some things to look for in our kids? So like it's so hard when they're younger. They're still like growing and they could change. Like what would be okay, let me tell you what we're looking for. Our daughter is not even school aged yet. And one of the things we were looking for is location. And she is kind of an academic learner. I think she would be okay sitting down in a classroom. Um, she is very active. All little kids are. Um, but at the same time, this girl, like, and I think every kid does, I don't know, but like, this girl is obsessed with seeing things in person. Like, the one thing that you really, really sold me on earlier was the field trips. Like how big of a deal is it when a school does a field trip? You have to get multiple permission slips, handle liability, buses. It's a whole time out of the day. It uses school resources. But if you're at home, you just get in the car and you go somewhere. Like it's a lot easier to do more field trips. And I think field trips are super valuable. I don't know.
They are
So
so valuable. I am very much a go on as many field trips as you possibly can. Even the ones that you think aren't learning experiences, they're learning experiences. Trust me.
yeah, we made the decision to put in the effort to travel as well with our daughter. And the thing, she's only 2 years old. She remembers everything. I'm like blown away. Like she always talks about we went to Opryland You know, the Opryland Hotel in
Yes, we love it there.
okay, they have like this little boat. It's like an indoor little boat on a little river. Okay. And they took a little picture of us. And she thinks about that boat until now. Like she always thinks about it. She wanted a boat. We got her like a toy boat that she could sit in from Amazon. like like she thinks about that a lot. We when we went to the beach, she collected seashells and we kept them and we put them in a jar. And she takes them out and
Yeah,
she looks at them and plays with them and talks about the beach. And then she'll watch something on TV and it'll all click together. It all makes sense. It's like I'm saying the simplest things. You know, like we didn't
oh
even
yeah.
go on an educational field trip like to a museum. I mean, we did, but I'm just saying like those the it doesn't always have to be so much effort and thought put into making a field trip. It could be any new experience that just fills your child's mind with interest and curiosity and knowledge firsthand, not out of a book or picture. Like firsthand, you go and see it yourself. It's so valuable.
So valuable. One argument that I hate is people telling me that your kid isn't going to remember their trips. And I'm like, you guys have no idea. You have no idea what we bring back from these trips. And I could go on forever with all of the different experiences my kids have had, but it does open a whole world for them. One time we went on a trip and Braden was super into airplanes and he was so excited. It wasn't even his first trip, but he was so excited about this trip going on the airplane, and the pilot saw how excited he was. So he invited him into the cockpit and showed him around. And I thought it was just the coolest thing. They gave him the wings. And then when we were there, we took him to the science center. And the entire section of the science center it was like the airplane section. I think we spent about an hour there, but he knows everything about airplanes now. It's incredible. These trips
Yeah.
are all learning experiences and it makes things out of a book come to real life. And I've talked about this with you before too, just this idea of like bringing things to life for kids. It's crazy how much more real it becomes to them when they see it in person and they make sense of it. And they see that it's not just something we're reading out of a book. This is a real thing and it's so cool. And look what it does, you know?
Yeah.
Traveling with your kids, and it doesn't even have to be traveling, just taking them out into the real world. Like I know traveling is not that accessible for everyone and it's not that easy either, but you can always do, local day trips. Just
I mean,
take them out into the world, go on a
I
field trip at home.
we have everything here in Michigan anyway. We have
Yeah,
beaches.
exactly.
We have a lot of things to see. I have another example is my daughter's been watching these super simple songs cartoons, and there's one of them that's about like transportation. It's like a whole playlist of like transportation songs, like rocket ships and trains and airplanes and cars and stuff and school buses. And every
Yeah.
single day she wants to watch that playlist. Every single day. She's like obsessed with it. And the other day, she told me she wants to go on a train. And I was like, I got to get this girl on a train. So then I messaged you, like, where can I find a train?
Oh my goodness, you know where you should take her? I have to see
Where?
what it is. They have something called Touch a Truck, and it's different kinds of transportation. It's really cool. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna send it to you.
Oh, I think she'd love that. And I was thinking if she keeps this interest, because her interests are changing like every day. Maybe we'll go do something at the Dream Cruise. But anyways, I did get something. That's what I wanted to tell you. I found a train event, literally a train event at Greenfield Village, and I got tickets. So we're gonna see how she likes that. I'll keep you posted.
I'm
So
sure
I
she's gonna love it.
honestly, this is just as much fun for me as it is for my child. Like I love to
I
see
know.
her excitement, and I love to see things open her eyes wide, like her to say, "Oh, it's a train! Wow, look at it! It's red! It's a red train!" Whatever she says when she sees things. Like I love to see her excitement. And then the coolest thing to me is that she sees this in real life. No, she sees it as a cartoon or as a video. Then she sees it in real life. Then she comes back and watches the cartoon with a whole different mindset. Like, oh, this is what it really is. Like, you're
Yeah.
continuously adding layers. You're adding layers to their knowledge. It's overlapping and building. That's how you build knowledge. I just love this conversation so much because you and I always talk about it, like with books, like where books come into the picture, books and flashcards and things like that. Why we should actually spend time reading books and not just keep reading the next book, next book. Let's do a different one. Let's do a different one. Let's pick what they like, read it,
Yeah.
get deeper into it, show them in real life. This is a pot. This is a pan. Whatever. If the book is about food.
Yeah, I mean, learning is endless. You could learn you just have to be a little intentional about it and have that thought process, and you'll find ways to teach your kids through everything around you, which is also going back to your original question with homeschooling. I think parents are now starting to see that and realize that and see, like, wow, my kid almost learned more from the one day that I spent with them than they did reading out of a textbook. Maybe I should do this forever.
Yeah, and I love so many schools and teachers, but like let's think about it. Schools are constantly telling you their classroom size because everybody knows now the smaller the classroom size, the more individualized attention your child will get. And everybody wants individualized attention because I think we all recognize that every child is different. And then how much
Yeah,
more individualized can you get than one on one or one on three? How
exactly.
many ever kids you have?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I kind of want to shift gears a little bit because we've just kind of been on the same topic forever. And I really want to talk about Catholic schools because it's a big subject in our community. Actually, there's like a lot of, I'm sorry to say, judgment. There's judgment, there's pressure, there's like people asking me what school I'm putting my child in. Everybody keeps asking us, and like she's not even in school
Yeah.
yet. And some people feel so strongly that their school is the best one on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And that and some people just they just want us all to be together, they just innocently just want all the kids to grow up together because we're friends and family, and
Yeah.
it's just become such a big topic. And I want to, like, we don't have to get into names, but I want to talk about how to compare Catholic schools to make the best decision for your family. We'll stay brief on this one because I also want to talk about public schools. So really quick on Catholic schools, like how do you decide between them for you and your family?
Yeah. So I agree with you. It has gotten really, really tense. I think people get into heated arguments and debates about it. Everybody thinks their school is better. Parents feel a lot of guilt or shame around the school that they choose for their kids. And we've talked about, how you really can't find a perfect school. We just said that. You can't find a perfect school. Even when people ask me, like, what's the best Catholic school? Which one should I look at? It's very rare that I'll give somebody one answer because I know for a fact I have been in a lot of these schools. The perfect Catholic school doesn't exist. Every single school has flaws. And the leadership changes the school a lot too. So you could be at a school that you absolutely love, you have a new leader, and now it's totally shifting. So what do? You change you switch schools every time the leader changes. The turnover rate is high at a lot of these schools. The teacher turnover rate is high too. Sometimes your kid could have a great year at that school, but then the next year they're struggling because the teacher makes a difference too. So there isn't a perfect school that exists. There just isn't. And it goes back to me saying, make a list of your priorities. What is the most important thing to you? Does your child struggle in school? Do they need extra resources? Do they need extra support? What kind of support do they need? Are they high needs, or maybe they just have a little struggle with like reading and might need extra assistance with that? Will the school that you choose provide that for your child? I know of a really, really good Catholic school. A lot of our community members go to it. It is terrible with extra resources. Just awful, actually. They do not prepare kids with dyslexia, with ADHD, just like minor academic support. They don't have resources to provide that. So the kids end up leaving, missing a ton of the academics. They are struggling to get into local high schools. And even though it's a great school for some kids, it wasn't necessarily the best fit for that particular child. So you really have to understand your kid when you're choosing the best school for them, because the best school doesn't exist. The best school is the best one for your kid. Sometimes that could mean public school because the resources that your child needs might only be available at a public school. There's everybody's so like, public schools are terrible, and I have my own issues with them. A lot of it is just the ideology and things like that I struggle with. But for some kids, they thrive in that environment. And if you're super involved and you know what's going on, you could combat some of that stuff.
And I am finding it increasingly difficult to combat some of that stuff in a public school, which is why personally, like if I was going to make my own decision for my own family, if for any reason we couldn't do a Catholic school or a hybrid homeschool, which seem to be my two favorite options right now. If for any reason, I would struggle a lot with choosing a public school because it seems like you can't really opt out of things you don't believe in anymore.
Yeah, I would too. But again, that's because my list of priorities, you and I, we make a list of priorities of our top 5 most important things. That is one of those things on both of our list. But for some parents, it's just not. They don't care. In their mindset, they think it's okay if my child is exposed. I will handle it this way at home and they'll be okay. You and I don't think that way. We have
Yeah.
different perceptions of it. So for us and our kids, we don't think it's a good fit. But that's not necessarily the case for everyone.
Yeah. And what if somebody doesn't have a choice? Like what if they're working full time and they need to? And there's absolutely no shame in that. You have to do what you need to do to take care of your family. And what if,
There is no shame, but I am going to pause you right there and just say everybody has a choice in the world that we live in today.
like,
Everyone has a choice. So if you are so strongly against public schooling for your kid, but you feel torn, you have a choice. And homeschooling is a really, really good choice.
how can they
Even if
homeschool?
you're,
How can they
even if you're
homeschool?
homeschooling doesn't have a time, you do it when you get home.
Oh, I never thought about that. It's
I mean,
exhausting, but I would do it, honestly.
Exactly. That's and that just goes back to we always have a choice, but it just depends how we're going to make that choice work, how much it matters to us. For me, it matters enough. Like if I knew my kid was being exposed to specific ideology that I don't necessarily agree with, I would make that sacrifice, overdose on the caffeine, and find a way to educate my child at home. But again, that goes back to my list of priorities. It's
Well,
something that I really struggle with.
another reason somebody might want to go to a public school is what I'm learning is if they have a child with special needs. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And they have more resources than any private school can offer. Again, in my dream world, which may come to life at some point, I would love to have a Catholic school that has a very strong special needs program. I think it's something that we're seriously lacking that we need.
I
But I
love
think our
that.
hybrid homeschooling program is kind of a step in the right direction. They're doing an amazing job from what I hear, and it's certainly something you can consider.
Okay. I really love that if we had a strong special needs program. Okay, so another thing that I just learned about literally like this week, because I had no idea what it was and I knew we were going to have this podcast conversation, is magnet schools. One of our coworkers has his daughters in a magnet school and he always raves about it. And his daughters are geniuses, it seems like. I really wanted to look into it and I did a little bit of research. And can you tell us like what a magnet school is? And then I'll see if I have any questions.
Yeah, so magnet schools are public schools, but they have focus areas. They're like specialized public schools, and basically the idea behind them is to do something specific that could sort of bring a certain crowd in that might be attracted to that thing. So an example would be year-round school. They wanted to try that. They created a magnet school that goes year-round. I don't know if it still exists. I want to say it was somewhere around Lake Orion, maybe Clarkston. There's also language immersion magnet schools. I believe there's one that is a Japanese immersion school that's in Plymouth. So those are just examples. They have these focuses, but they are still publicly funded.
That's the thing that I just learned. I didn't realize that a magnet school is not a charter school. A magnet school is literally a public school, but had they have extra resources because the public all public schools cannot be a magnet school because it costs more. And but a magnet school also can't provide everything that a public school has either. It's just very interesting. It's specialized. I was
It's
looking
cool
at
if you think about it. If there's something specific, I was actually just recently talking to somebody. I learned of that Japanese school because their daughter currently goes to a Montessori. I believe she's 4 or 5. And they were going back and forth, just asking questions about the different schooling out there. And they're like, I think we've decided on a school. We're going to send her to a Japanese immersion school. And my first thought was, they're not Japanese, but they were fascinated by this idea of their child being trilingual.
So there was one magnet school that more people might be familiar with here because I actually know a Chaldean guy that went there. He's also a very, very smart guy. It's called International Academy. And
Yeah, they have one in Macomb, and then they have another one in Bloomfield Hills.
yeah, I don't know if they have more locations now or not. But I was reading up about it, and
Right.
it's the interesting their specialization is that it's international. It's called International Academy. It's a regular public school, technically funded by the state, but it's harder to get into. You have to apply and meet qualifications, and then they have a lottery. But once you're in there, there's an international focus in every part of every classroom, which
Technically, so it's an international baccalaureate, and they're not the only school that does this, but they just follow this educational framework that is recognized in like 150 different countries. So if you were to move to a different country, they would recognize your academics. And there's certain things that they actually have to follow to become an IB school. So it's pretty cool, especially if you want to do international business. Well,
that's very interesting for people that have dual citizenships. I think that would be a great school for them.
I know someone who actually went to this school. They were from Germany and they were dual citizens. So they were German citizens and they were also obviously like the United States citizen.
That's perfect because they can transfer their credits to Germany, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's really, really
It's
cool.
a great school. It's a really, really good school if you have the opportunity to go there.
Isn't that like proof that public schools could just be so much better? I honestly believe after I went to battle with the Michigan Board of Education recently, I honestly believe these people are just blowing resources. And I know they're trying, and I know, and this you're probably not in a position to criticize as much as I am. So I just want to say that I am just so disappointed in the public school system. It could be so much better. They've become just way too political, ideological, combative, fighting over political beliefs of which political beliefs we're going to teach in the classroom. Like, why don't you just focus
Yeah.
on making smarter kids? Like when you look at International Academy, even though it's a public school, maybe they're not teaching the right ideology. You still think, wow, that's a great school. These kids are coming out smart. Like
Yeah,
at least that much.
I have always had this thought that in order for the school systems to get better, especially public schooling, there needs to be some sort of collapse, right? We need to see the collapse of the school system in order for them to actually come in and say, oh, we need to change something. We're losing too many students or this isn't working. I do think we're kind of shifting in that direction with the amount of parents and families that have pulled their kids away from public schools. So we've had about 2 million people that have left the public school system, and they do think that that number is going to actually increase and more will leave the public school systems. There are a lot of states that are trying different things like lottery systems and all of that. I think a lot of families don't think they have options, but they do. And over time, you're going to find that many of these families are going to choose alternatives. And I
Yeah.
genuinely believe that because there is no way that people can be so okay with what's going on. They wouldn't be if they knew what was going on. That's usually what I say. If you knew what was going on and you got a little involved, I don't know that you would be okay with a lot of it. And again,
I tried to fight it, and the maybe I just don't feel like I got as I mean, some people were just totally on board and following me through the process and helping me. But then there was I feel like the majority of people just were not as interested as me posting a selfie. Like when I was talking
well,
about like how what was going on at the Michigan Board of Education, how they're trying to include ideological views that not everybody shares in every classroom rather than as an elective or as in a special classroom where parents opt in. They wanted to include it in every aspect of education. And I just thought that was so bad. So it's unfair to people that don't agree with you.
right. I think the problem with all of it is just that public schools have become so politicized and it's just become this, we're just going to encourage anything that's left leaning, right? But I also want to be very, very clear in all of this that not all public schools are the same. And we need to be very aware of that. So even though the higher ups in a lot of schools, like I wish I could. I want to name schools right now or like districts right now that have gotten really, really bad with left leaning politics. But I do want to say that some of them haven't as much. And I would say it's the ones that have a little more diverse of a demographic at the school. Some of those parents have been at the schools trying to combat whatever it is that's going on. And a lot of these parents are winning.
Yeah.
So it does depend on the district. You have to be careful, but as a parent, you also have to be very, very involved. I always say this is not the time to be apathetic about your child's education. You need to be involved. You need to know what's going on. You need to ask the questions, be in the school, volunteer. Otherwise, you're not going to know what they're teaching your kid. I have a
Yeah.
friend,
And team up with
just to
other
give you an
parents
example.
because everyone's
Her,
so yeah, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but like um since everyone is so busy, team up with other parents. Maybe you take turns.
yeah,
Do something where you can stay involved and active and informed. So go ahead with your
exactly.
example. Sorry about that.
Yeah, like-minded parents, right? But I have a friend that she sent her kids to a local public school, very great district. People typically rave about it. And she found out through a social media post, by the way, a social media post by the teacher that her daughter had these books in the classroom. Her daughter's in first grade, by the way, that were very controversial. As a parent, just knowing that that book was in my child's classroom, even if the teacher told me I'm not reading it, just the fact that they're being exposed to it would drive me absolutely crazy. So she found out through social media. Obviously, since then, she has pulled her kids from the school. She said it was the best decision she ever made. But that just is one example of how involved you have to be to understand what is going on in these classrooms. Because when she took it to the higher ups, they denied it. They denied it. She had taken down the post, and then she's like, well, good thing I screenshotted it. Here it
Oh,
is.
wow. Wow, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
they
They
deny so much. It's just crazy. One time that, sorry, I can go on about this forever, but Monica Yatsume had posted something about a school one time, and I know about 3 or 4 people that work at the school, and someone that I know was saying, well, it's not true. That never happened. She kept arguing against it. She also works for the district. She didn't work for that specific school, but that's what they were telling them, right? From the district level, they're telling them, oh, it's all blown out of context. It's not true. This never happened. My other friend that actually was on maternity leave that worked at that school, I reached out to her and I asked her about it. She said, that is exactly what happened. It's a whole thing right now. She works there, so she knows firsthand exactly what's going on. And she was saying every part of it is true. There wasn't one thing
wow.
that was embellished. So you're getting these schools that they're trying to cover up a lot of what's going on in the classroom. And if you were a believer in what you were teaching these kids and it wasn't an issue, why are you hiding it? I have so many issues what goes on behind
That's
closed doors.
I'm not like the biggest fan of this word, but it's the only word that suits what is happening when you don't want parents to know what you're doing with their children. It's called a groomer. That's the word. That's what it is. When you are trying to groom a child the way that you want, that you know their parents wouldn't approve of, and you're willing to lie about what you're doing, you are a groomer. I'm sorry if you're a teacher and you're listening to this. If you are doing something that you know the parents might not be happy with, but you think it's right, and deep down in your beliefs, it doesn't matter what you believe and don't believe. The word to define that is groomer. I'm sorry. That's what I called some people at the Board of Education level because that is what they are. And I have no remorse in saying it. And I just don't care. It's a fact. It's a
Yeah.
definition. It's a matter of definition.
I
That's
know
sad.
it's so tricky. It's sad. I remember when all of that stuff was going on with the new health standards that they were trying to pass and how they tried to justify it. And at the end, when they were making all of these valid points, their response was basically not in these exact words, but too bad, so sad, we're doing it anyway. It's like,
Yes.
what? You're choosing to do exactly what we're accusing you of doing. You're denying, but you're going to do it anyway.
It's all
Like,
serious.
it's
Oh my gosh,
just,
there's no logic, there's no common sense. It's just because they don't care. They don't care. They
yeah.
don't care. They're funded by people that want them to go in these directions. At the end of the day, it all comes down to money. Based on my research, it seems like it all comes down to money and politics, and these people want more positions. They're career politicians, not education enthusiasts, unfortunately. I don't want to say it about
Yeah.
all of them. I know you don't want to say it about all of them because we both know some people that are like us. They just love the whole field of education, genuinely. They just are filled with joy to see children minds grow and their eyes light up and see the world that God created. And let's go back to the positive a little bit.
It's hard, right? It's such a difficult, again, this is why people get so heated and they get so tense around these conversations. But we have to be mindful that even though at the district level, some of this stuff is just awful and terrible, sometimes at the school level and the classroom level, it's not as bad. But that's why, again, I say you cannot be apathetic during this time. You need to be involved, know what's going on in your kid's classroom. A public school could work for you. It's not like it can't. It can. You just have to be very mindful and involved.
Okay, I think that's well said. I want to ask you something that might seem off topic, but I don't think it is, and you probably don't think it is either. Do kids still carry book bags full of books, or are they carrying digital books? Is it different by school?
It's different by school. It's a combination. I personally don't love digital books. Actually, I'm not going to say that I do. I like both. I always like to have both. Some schools offer both. A lot of schools do now. So they'll give you an online textbook, but then they'll have in-class textbooks as well.
Okay, so this is something that you and I barely talk about, so I'm kind of excited to talk about it with you. So artificial intelligence has gotten really crazy right now. Like you don't have to learn design skills. If you're studying that, you can have it make a flyer for you. You can write a whole essay. You could teach it to learn how you write and match your writing. Have you guys run into any issues with this at school? Like, have you guys had the conversation at your school about Chat GPT or not really?
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts around Chat GPT. I think it's really tricky in a lot of schools because people want to stick to what they are doing and continue doing that, and just getting kids in trouble for using Chat GPT. Oh, this kid cheated, or they'll accuse them of using Chat GPT when they don't know for sure because they put it in some kind of little I forget what they're called, but you put it in and it'll tell you, oh, this kid has a 98% AI written
Oh
paper, which
yeah.
is not true, by the way, because I put one of my old college papers in it just to see what it would say. And it was like 90% plus written by AI. I
Oh
was like,
wow.
either AI thinks I'm a genius that it created that AI wrote this paper, but it's not true. That's not the case. I don't believe any of those. AI is one of those things that I think you just have to learn how to use it. We can't get into this mindset that, oh, it's bad, take it out of schools. We're not going to use it. Our kids can't use it. They're all going to cheat. I don't know if you remember because you're super, super old, but like back in the day, we had encyclopedias.
Oh, how
So,
about I don't know if you remember, but I bought an encyclopedia collection.
well, you would. I don't know. I don't remember that because that is not something I would do, but it's yeah, encyclopedias, think about it. That's what we used back in the day. And then the internet came out and there was like Ask Jeeves. Remember Ask Jeeves?
Oh
But there
yeah.
was panic when the internet came out. We have to make sure that they don't forget how to use the encyclopedia just because there's the internet. So I always use that example with some of our teachers. I'm like, listen, there once was encyclopedias. We no longer use them because all of the information we need is online. So ChatGPT to me is just like that. It's transitioning how we're seeking information. But before we used to teach kids how to use encyclopedias, now we teach them how we use Google and how we search online, but we still teach them how to use books. AI to me is very similar. I think we need to teach kids how to use it. And also, we need to rethink how we're teaching our students. Giving a student a paper to write at home is probably not going to give you the assessment that you're looking for. It's not going to tell you how your student how your student writes because they could go home and they could use ChatGPT and you wouldn't know. So you're going to have to rethink how you assign certain things. Maybe you're giving more in-class assignments that target higher depths of knowledge and are more hands-on. If you want to work on writing skills, you have them sit and write it in class where you can monitor them. Turn off your screens and write a paragraph about this, and that's going to give you the best evidence of what they can do. But I don't know, like this entire idea of no chat GPT bad is just not, it's not going to work.
I really, really, really agree with you. I'm glad that you said that. I think you worded it perfectly. I believe that even using ChatGPT requires education. Like a lot of people, grown adults that I know that are very intelligent, will trust ChatGPT. You can't even trust everything ChatGPT says. When you ask ChatGPT a question, please ask for sources. Like, ask
Yeah.
for sources. Be like, and where did you get this information from? It gave my brother, your brother too. It gave our brother and me, Toma and I. We were. He's actually. I'm going to have him on the podcast. You guys are going to love him. But Toma and I were researching our family history, and ChatGPT confidently gave us our entire family history. And we were like, no way. And we're like, wait a second. How the heck does it know this? We've been researching for years. Like, we've been searching for years and years. And then we're like, give us some sources. And then ChatGPT goes, yeah, I made it up. Like, what in the world? Like, why would you
Whoa.
do that?
Yeah, but that's exactly it, right? We have to teach these kids how to use it. And we also have to teach them, again, just like we taught them how to use the internet, we have to teach them the proper way to use it, when to use it. It's become a little controversial and very like, I don't know if you saw recently that there was a professor at the University of Michigan that accused a student of using Chat GPT on their paper. And the student is now suing the university, and they're like, we have all of the proof and evidence and timestamp of everything to prove that they've just I don't know what ended up happening. I believe that it somehow prevented the student from graduating early. It
Oh, wait,
was a whole thing.
I did hear about that. I heard about that.
Yeah, so to me, I'm so tired of reading about teachers and professors accusing students of using ChatGPT because one, you don't know for sure, and you can't write now. So I used to use the M dash when I wrote anything, I shouldn't say when I wrote anything, but I would use it often. It was just part of my writing.
And the M
Now,
dash, everyone, the M dash is the hyphen in between words.
yeah. So now if you use it, everybody immediately thinks it's Chat GPT because
Yeah.
Chat
I have
GPT is knowing for using the M dash. So now I will take it very purposefully out of my writing because I don't want people to think I'm like Chat GPT, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't care if they think that. I
That's
don't know.
so funny because every time somebody sends something with an dash, they get accused of using Chat GPT. That's so funny that
Yeah.
you brought that example up. Another thing is I really, really like I have firsthand seen my husband who allows Chat GPT in the workplace and in fact encourages it. I have seen how encouraging it doesn't make you handicapped. It doesn't at all. It gives you time to do other things. So like now his employees are shortening their time spent on one thing and expanding their time used on other things. So like
Yeah.
if you want more time in the classroom to do other things, and I think it's obviously different with education. You might feel like you're handicapping learning, but I think you gave a great example. Have them right in front of you if you really want to see if they know how to write.
You just have to shift how you teach. But actually, what's interesting right now, if you were to look up jobs, like let's say you go and apply for a job right now and you just go anywhere, Indeed, and look up jobs, you will see how many jobs are actually requesting that or are familiar with using AI. Pulling it out of schools, what are you really doing? Are you really preparing your kids or your students for the workplace? Isn't that kind of one of our ultimate goals?
Yeah, another thing is it's not just about ChatGPT. There's this other AI that just came out, and I don't want to get too far into this because I really want to bring Chris back, my husband, because he is so like into this stuff and a strong advocate for using different resources and tools to grow your business and in every category of life utilizing these additional resources that are now available to us. There's other tools that can do different things than ChatGPT, unique things. Like AI is being incorporated in every corporation.
And
It's
why
a
wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they try to maximize their like work time?
Exactly. Another thing that you had kind of mentioned is that maybe it's just the teacher's education that might be outdated. I think that's where it's a great thing that there's continuing education. Like
Yeah.
that's where it would be a good thing to do is for teachers to learn about how to incorporate AI into the classroom. Maybe they're just afraid of it. Maybe they just don't understand it themselves.
They are afraid of it. They have to. Some of these teachers have been teaching for so long, and it's hard to get them. Think of like my dad, right? It's really hard to get him to move away from what he's used to doing because it's what they grew up on. It's what they were taught when they went to school is super important. But if you don't
Yeah.
have that thought process that education is constantly evolving, then you're going to get stuck into doing things the same way over and over again. And then it becomes dated, right?
And our dad is an example of somebody that I think has is always interested in learning.
Yeah, he
He's
is.
he's very
He is,
open
but
to learning.
change is hard. Change
Yep.
is hard when it's like on a larger scale, like change at work, I
Yeah.
think that's it's hard for everyone, but actually our parents are the ones who taught us to never stop learning, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's one thing that I really love and respect about our upbringing is that we believe that learning never stops. And I think a lot of people believe that. I want to talk about one last thing and then we'll close this up. But I really feel like I mean, America's always been very individualistic, but I think with the existence of more resources, the expansion of homeschooling, the interest in it, the understanding that every child is unique and different. Do you see a future where education is going to become more personalized?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of already is, or they try to say that it is, because they understand that that is a very valuable thing. I don't necessarily know that they know how to do that yet, especially with such large classrooms.
I just think it would be so cool if every kid just went on this path, but how hard and how many resources would need to be allocated to make that happen? To just like, like how much more brilliant would people be if somebody's just customizing for them all the time? And maybe it would be easier with AI. I don't know.
Well, it is kind of. So you could get really deep with the personalization, right? I mean, individualized education, or we usually call it differentiating instruction, where you have to differentiate for kids based on their needs. We actually give something called a STAR assessment. And the assessment is, it's like a standardized test, but it's rooted in growth. And it actually identifies each child's strengths and areas of improvement. So I would say that's one example of providing a more individualized education. But again, you could get even deeper into that. How individualized do you want it? Are we targeting their specific interest? And at what age do we start doing that?
Yeah, and then how do you prevent yourself from boxing them in too much and not giving them the
Exactly.
freedom to explore,
Exactly.
which is something that was interesting about Iraq is our mom said that in Iraq at high school you take kind of a career direction.
They
To
place you based on that. That's which is so crazy. Like if you're like, oh no, I really want to do this, they'd say no, but your strengths are in math. You're going to be an accountant.
Yeah, it's a tricky topic of personalized education. Like how do you personalize without boxing kids in? I think is the question that we're left with, right?
Yeah, and it's so much easier to do that if you are not in a regular traditional school setting. When you have 24 kids in a classroom and you're trying to make sure every student masters every standard, it just becomes a lot trickier, right? To individualize lesson plans for every single child. Right now, if you actually really wanted to personalize your child's education, you could look at different types of schools. So there's one of my coworkers actually sent her child to a project-based learning school because she knows that her
What's
child learns.
What's a project-based learning school? Because what I think of a project is like a science fair, like you're presenting a hypothesis and whatever.
Yeah, so it's just giving them, that's similar to what that would be. They give them a problem or a question, It's typically like inquiry based, and they have to figure out a solution, and they kind of talk through how they get to that solution. It's basically application. So they're applying critical thinking skills to it. And the
I don't
teacher
know if
usually
I
like guides it and they facilitate it.
it
But
sounds
they're
it sounds super interesting. I definitely want to look into it and learn more because I don't know if I fully grasp like how the whole school operates. But we don't have to get into all of that right now. Um, I just wanted to know what it meant generally before you finish what you were about to say about how
So an
some.
example would be like instead of sitting and reading out of a textbook about plants, you're going to sit and teach like, okay, how can we design a pollinator garden for our local park? Then they would study it a little bit and then they would start planting. Does
Oh,
that make sense? Like
I
I'm just
love
giving
that.
really silly examples, but that's kind of how it works.
That's not silly. I love that. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
to me that's real life school.
Yeah, and it works well for kids who are just more kinesthetic, hands-on learners as well. So it's really, again, it goes back to what we talked about. You really have to know your child, what their strengths are, how they learn, and what your priorities are. And she went after that. She actually has, I believe she has 3 kids, and they all go
Whoa.
to different schools.
You know what we didn't get into that if you don't mind, we can get into it real quick, is the types of learners. You said kinesthetic, and I know what that is because I talk to you all the time. But I want to tell our listeners what are the types of learning styles because that might help them in deciding where to send their children to school and what kind of education their children need.
So there are 4 different types of learners. You could be a visual learner, you could be auditory, you could be kinesthetic, which is more hands-on, or reading and writing. It actually used to be 3, and then they separated reading and writing into its own category. But if you're a visual, it just means that you learn best by seeing the information. If you're auditory, you learn best by hearing it. Reading and writing obviously is just taking notes, reading books, writing. And then kinesthetic is by hands on and maybe movement, building, experiments and things like that. And we've talked about our different learning styles. It's kind of funny because you kind of see that stuff in your own kids. I am very much not a auditory learner, and you are. And I always tell you this because Ariel, your daughter, is also an auditory learner. And she blows my mind. Like you'll teach her, so you don't even teach her some things, she'll just repeat them because she's very much an auditory learner. And actually, I find Braden to be very visual, and so am I. So maybe it's hereditary. Who knows?
I feel like Braden is so kinesthetic though.
He is very much kinesthetic, but so am I. And I'm also reading and writing. Honestly, I can beat all of them, but auditory is my weakest area. And I try to strengthen it by listening to books, even though I prefer to read them. Sometimes I'll do audiobooks, podcasts sometimes just because I want to be better at it.
I
But I
used
know
to
for sure it's my weakness.
okay, I used to do this tutoring program where we didn't like to call it a weakness. It's an area of improvement.
That's what we always say too, but I'm calling it a weakness because it's weak. we, that's our language at school too. We never say weakness. We always say area of improvement and strengths, but nope, it is a weakness. I'm just not a good listener. My mind is always in like 10 different places when someone's talking to me.
Yeah, that could come with being a mom too. You're just like thinking of a
Oh,
hundred
it got
things.
worse with being a mom. It got so much worse. That's why I know this, I'm aware of it, and I try my best to work on it because it's getting worse and worse because,
Well,
every time I'm doing one thing, I'm doing 10 things.
it's honestly excused because I like to listen and learn. That's why I'm just so obsessed with podcasts. I like to hear people talk things out and argue and debate and discuss. And I just remember them better that way. Like when my teacher was talking about something, I felt like they were personally talking to me. And they're like, we want you to know this information. I'd be like, okay, thanks. Like I got the information now. But when they tell me to go read a textbook, I'm like, this is so long. Or if they tell me to like, watch their PowerPoint presentation, I'm like, are you going to explain what I'm looking at? Like, so
Yeah,
you're right. I do lean a certain way. I think I agree with you that we all learn all 4 ways.
I don't know,
Um,
but that's how technology actually. Remember when I got an iPad when I was in college? And it totally transformed my educational journey because now I could highlight in my books and take notes in my books. And it was just the greatest thing to happen to me just because that's the type of learner I am.
I remember that very well because I tried to be like you and I couldn't do it. Because I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you kept telling me how great it was. You're like, oh my gosh, you need like this iPad and a stylus and you could take notes and look, you can just zoom in and drag and drop and highlight and
Yeah.
you can make pages and folders and you were so excited about it. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do it too. I did like one page and I was like, this is too hard. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But
Again, totally different learners.
I want to go back real quick to maybe gender roles, if you want to call it that, or whatever your home roles are, your roles at home is, or parenting roles, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Like being a parent does take your mind in different directions. Because even though you and I agree that I'm an auditory learner, it definitely has become a lot harder when my husband and I are talking to each other, and he's thinking about work and stuff and whatever's on his mind. I'm like, did you even hear what I just said? Or I'm thinking about 50 things of the kids that I have to do. Which one's crying? I can hear them before they even cry. Like, and that's how the motherly instincts comes into play. Like, oh, they need something. They need something. This is about to happen. All right. It's about to go down right now. Who's ready? Like you always know what's about to happen with
Yeah.
your kids. You develop this new instinct, and my husband will be talking to me and he'll be like, did you even hear what I said? Like we'll be like having some communication blocks with these kids that we're obsessed with.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I think your learning style doesn't define you. It's just something good to know about yourself and your children, just so that you can learn best, and it could change.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all there is to it, right?
Yeah, you should never have the perspective of, oh, this is my learning style. I'm only going to learn this way. In fact, you should identify your learning styles so that if you struggle with something, you know to resort to that and use it to make sure that you get what you need. But you should always, always try the others as well, because you don't want that to be the only way for you to learn. You want to strengthen all four areas. And if you're only utilizing one, you're only strengthening one. But if you continue to practice with the other ones, I do believe you can get better at them. That's why I keep practicing with the auditory, because I don't just want to say, oh, I'm terrible at this, I'm not going to do it. We all need to be auditory. We all need to be kinesthetic. We all need to be visual, because we're going to be using that forever. It's not like something you can just say, oh, I'm never going to learn auditorily. It's not realistic.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
want to keep practicing.
Okay. Okay, so we went into we're still on the topic of personalized education, and I think that does have a lot to do with it. Overall, I think we had a very good discussion. I know that this could go on forever, especially since this is your career. You're constantly embedded in this every day. We didn't even get into curriculum. I know that's a great passion of yours. Is there any closing thoughts that you'd like to share um, before we end today's conversation? We can always come back if something comes up in your mind that you really want to talk to people about, or you just want to, chat it out officially with me?
No, I think our biggest thing coming into all of this was just to relieve some of that guilt and tension that parents feel when choosing a school for their child, and just let them know that there are options out there. And if they ever want to talk about some of their options, or if they feel stuck, they're more than welcome to reach out. I've helped a ton of parents navigate schooling. Even if there's questions about something going on in their schools at the moment, I'm happy to help. So, but
Okay.
don't ever feel guilty, and know that there are options.
Awesome. Okay, I think we had an amazing conversation today with a lot of very useful information. We could definitely do this again if some new topic comes up in education, or if anybody wants to hear from Reem again about something in particular. I know this is a very hot topic in our community. I couldn't think of a better person to start the conversations with. So thank you for everything that you shared. Thank you for your time. I know you're super busy with your three kids and your job and everything going on. We're going to close off with a Bible verse of your choice. Do you have something that you want to share right now?
My favorite Bible verse is Matthew 6:26. Look at the birds in the sky. They do not sow or reap. They gather nothing into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are not you more important than they?
Why do you love that verse?
I think it just reminds us all that at the end of the day, God takes care of us no matter what we're going through. And it's a good reminder for us all because everyone's going through something.
Yeah. And even on the topic of education, yes, you should be proactive, but keep your faith, keep God at the center of your family and your life, and everything will be okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you all for listening to our second episode of the Chaldean Catholic Podcast. We now have a webpage up. It's at www.saintjacobfoundation, Saint is spelled out, .org/podcast. That's saintjacobfoundation.org/podcast. That's where you can request a guest. You can nominate yourself or somebody else to come talk. And this is a topical podcast. It's not about the person, it's not about your business. It's about the topic, a topic that affects people, that affects our community. It could be your business and your career. In fact, that would be great because you might have a greater expertise on the subject. But it's not to promote your business, it's to help our community navigate through big major topics in all of our lives. So I would really appreciate if anybody's interested in coming on. I have a great list of guests coming up. Tune in every Monday where we drop an episode. And thank you again for listening. Have a great day, everyone.
The